Welcome, Cannafyl community. Ed Cheney here, delivering the first part of a three-part Pro Series. Today's topic will be on receptors and transmitters. Now, inside of the topic of the ECS, there are only three parts that we'll be discussing over the three-part series, and it will be receptors, ligands, and systems. Now, receptors, we're going to go into great detail, you'll understand them, but I want to share what a ligand is. A ligand is a transmitter. Endocannabinoid and a phytocannabinoid, like CBD, is a type of ligand. All right, and then finally, when I say systems, I'm talking about the systems within inside your body in which the ECS system manages, like your immune response system and your digestive system. Those are all the systems that this ECS system is in charge of and wants to always keep it at optimal operating level. Now, so let's start our conversation with what are receptors? Okay. Receptors are, and in short, they are throughout your body, and they know exactly what to do when they're turned on. Now, I think the way I want to explain this is, let me have a conversation with maybe how the ECS system works. So the ECS system works much like the lecture room at a college. So if I'm the lecturer and I'm at the front of the room and the room is full of students, then here's how your ECS system might resemble this. So maybe after about a half an hour of lecturing, I start seeing students' hands start raising. And two or three of them start popping up. And then when I ask them how things are going, they tell me, hey, it's getting hot in here. Okay, so the students are in fact the living cells in the body, if we were to compare this. And the students being the living cells in our body, they have the ability to understand their surroundings and to be able to transmit what adjustments need to happen. So much like that student raised his hand and said, hey, listen, professor, it's getting hot in here. So once that person did this, then I'm likely going to hear that information and want to do something about it. So that means I am going to be a ligand or a transmitter. Why? Because I'm going to take that indication that something needs to be adjusted and I'm going to walk over to the thermostat and I'm going to adjust it down. So what does that make the thermostat? Well, that makes the thermostat the receptor. Okay, so you have your living cell, as being your systems. You have your ligand, which is me, and that's a transmitter. And then finally you have the thermostat, which is the receptor. Now, let's go back to the conversation of what a receptor is. A receptor in your body knows exactly what to do, and it always does. It just needs a transmitter to tell it when to do it. Okay? All right. Oftentimes, we have multiple types of transmitters in our body. The one most commonly discussed when we talk about CBD and cannabis and the ECS system is called the CB1 receptor and the CB2 receptor. Both of these are G protein receptors. Some of them do a single action and some of them do a cascade of actions. Now, let me say what that means. So a single action would be a lot like that thermostat. I walk up, I turn the temperature down, it signals that receptor to do one thing. Turn the air conditioner on. Okay? Now, if I had a cascade type of receptor, this receptor, once it's turned on, has the ability to do multitasks or do one task and then follow up with another task and then follow up after that with another task. and so on, depending on what that receptor's job was to do. Keeping in mind, it does always know what to do. It just wants somebody to activate it, like the professor turning down the air conditioner. All right. Now let's look at the difference between CB1 and CB2 receptors. CB1 receptors are most abundant, and they're neurological receptors. So that means they're very abundant in the brain. They are also very abundant in the reproductive system. So these are CB1. These are CB1 receptors. CB1s are considered an agonist to neurological functions in our body. And then we have CB2 receptors. CB2 receptors are commonly found in red blood cells, and you will find them regulating or managing systems like your immune system, your inflammation system, your digestive system. That's where your CB2 receptors are, and they're usually scattered throughout your body. Excuse me. So, again, it's important to understand the differences between the CB1 and CB2, because when I move into the discussion about transmitters, you'll understand that there are transmitters that are made by the body and there's transmitters that are made by the plant. And the ones that are made by the plant, it's important to understand which ones are attracted to which receptors. Okay, and I'll make sure this gets clear. As we move into this conversation next, what are transmitters? So again, consider the conversation I had earlier. The students in the room knew what was going on around the room. They could sense the environment. Much like a living cell. A living cell has a cell membrane, which is considered the brain of the cell. And that cell membrane is very capable of sensing the environment that it's in and knowing the condition it needs to be in to run optimally. And if that condition is not there, it has the ability to signal. And in most cases, it's signaling for a transmitter, the right transmitter, to go turn on the right receptor. Okay. So these transmitters, they are in groups of endocannabinoids. Endocannabinoids meaning the body made them. That's the endo part. And then you have phytocannabinoids. Phytocannabinoids are plant-based cannabinoids. Now, whether they are in plants or whether they are made by the body, the human body knows how to use them. When we talk about a receptor will only be turned on by a cannabinoid with a very unique molecular structure. That's the key. So this structure, once it lands on the receptor, this receptor will recognize that structure and know to activate itself. Now, each one of these different types of cannabinoids, we each have a different molecular structure to them. In other words, they're a unique key for a very unique lock. So that receptor, if those two do not fit, the receptor has no use for that transmitter, and the transmitter can keep going. But if that transmitter lands on the receptor and it's a match, it activates the receptor, and the receptor does what it knows how to do, which is normally going to regulate something. Anyway, okay. So these cannabinoids, they all have different molecular structures. Inside your body, you have cannabinoids called, as an example, 2-AG, anandamide. You will recognize anandamide. Anandamide is a lot like dopamine. They call this the happy molecule. So when your body is asked to express more or produce more anandamide, you generally are feeling much better. Excuse me. So we have phytocannabinoids. You will know them as CBD. CBG, THC. These are all phytocannabinoids. And what we have learned over the years is that these cannabinoids have the molecular shape that is perfectly designed to activate a lot of these CB1 and CB2 receptors that are in our body. And if they do, those receptors can do what they need to do, and that will generally keep your body running at a state of optimal performance. And we call this homeostasis. All right, so let me go back to this. So most of the times we have CBD, who is very CB2 receptor friendly. They call it an agonist, so they're drawn to each other. So when you take CBD products, that receptor, who knows what that CBD molecule looks like, once you put those in your body, that CBD molecule is now present, and when your system says, I need an immune response, I've got too much inflammation, then that molecule lands on the receptor, and then the receptor then can down trigger the production of cytokines, which will then reduce inflammation. Okay, so in round, you can see how phytocannabinoids are extremely helpful to us in keeping our immune system working at its best. Now the trick was, as humans, is what plant out there has the right type of cannabinoids in it that will make my system work well. And yes, 3,000 years ago, it had already been known. So the hemp plant has just an abundance of these cannabinoids. There may be other plants out there, but they won't have the abundance that the hemp plant has. Now, so that is what your transmitter is. So your transmitter, again, is considered a ligand, and in the family of ligands there are cannabinoids, and these cannabinoids can either be endocannabinoids or phytocannabinoids from a plant. Examples would be from the plant CBD or THC. Let's talk. So we talked about CBD. CBD will come in and is more friendly to the CB2 receptors, immune response, digestion, such as that. Now, it does have an effect on CB1 receptors. It just doesn't need, the CB1 receptors do not need as much. Okay, so when we deal with CB1, we're dealing with neurological transmission or neurological signaling. So, and CBD is capable of doing that. What you have to do is get it to the right place. So remember, CB1 receptors are concentrated in the neural part of our, in our head area, as well as our reproductive. Now, what's a cannabinoid that's very agonist to your CB1 receptor? Believe it or not, it's THC. THC is the most. The oddity about this cannabinoid is that the version of the cannabis plants that we have to pick from are hemp and marijuana. And the marijuana has such an abundance of THC, it's very difficult to use it for anything that's neural without getting high. But when you take it from the hemp plant, the volume is much lower. And so what things are neural? Pain is neural. Different neurological functions that support mood is neural. So I talked to you about the two major cannabinoids in the hemp plant, the CBD and the THC. They both have value inside of our system. You cannot get high off of CBD, so you can take a great abundance of it. You can get high off of THC, so it's very difficult to take a lot of CBD for issues that you might have in your body and not have the consequences of being high. Now, so there are other cannabinoids that the plant makes, other transmitters. It makes CBG and CBA, CBC. These are all different cannabinoids. Now, they are minor cannabinoids. That means in the hemp plant, they're not as abundant, but they have a different molecular structure, and they can make different receptors that have tasks that are not grand tasks, but that are important to keep the body in homeostasis. And so these cannabinoids are also equally valuable. Now, here then comes the challenge. The challenge is to know which plant to be able to get these cannabinoids from. And I think that's become obvious lately. We've recognized, we understand the plant world fairly well now, and we recognize that the hemp plant is the right place to capture these cannabinoids. But the next step is to how to put those cannabinoids together in the right combination and at the right potencies to accomplish what we need to keep our body working in a state of homeostasis, and or at the same time helping us with conditions that we need. Maybe we need support with sleep or different types of issues that are neurological, as well as things that might cause us discomfort, like pain. So, and then that's our job, and then your job is to be able to administer these things. And as we've already shared with you in the past, there's 3 ways to administer them. You can either go topically, through the respiratory system, or through the digestive system. Now, so I just covered the first and second part of the ECS system. So we have receptors. Those are the ones that need to be told what to do, but once they have told, they do it very well, and they know exactly what to do. Some of them have a single function, and others have a cascade of functions. And then you have transmitters. Transmitters for the ECS system are known as cannabinoids. Cannabinoids can be either endocannabinoid or phytocannabinoid. Endo being human, phyto being plant. And the right combination of these cannabinoids inside of your body, as they're moving around your system, and your system calls out an imbalance somewhere, that this transmitter is ready to land on this receptor and trigger the activity to get that ECS system to come back into balance. In other words, get all the systems in your body to operate optimally as opposed to being off. Okay? There is your part 1 of a 3-part Pro Series. So I'll see you again on part 2, where we're going to talk about cannabinoids in more in depth. All right? Bye for now.